Character Creation Part 2, Physical Appearance. Hello again, I'm Gail and I'm glad to see you. Last time we looked at the role of the character. That's all about what they're going to achieve within the story. Now we need to put some flesh on the bones, quite literally. So today we're going to be talking about physical appearance. We need to look at things like height, weight, colouring, asymmetry, attractiveness, all those kind of things, but that I will leave to your own devices. So where are you going to start? Usually you start with what you know. Jack Reacher is well over 6 foot tall, but so is Lee Child. M.L. Wang is part Chinese, and Chinese culture is a strong influence on the look and feel of her fantasy writing. The point is that the starting point for most writers, even if they don't realise it, is in fact ethnicity. There's an old maxim that you write what you know, and when it comes to people, that is generally what we do. We write the ethnicity we know, which is usually the ethnicity that we are. Of course, that's not a universal truth. Many good writers write a spectrum of ethnicity, and those writing science fiction and fantasy have to actually think about more than ethnicity. They have to create whole new races and people and history, and maybe languages and writers too. One of the masters of this was, of course, J.R.R. Tolkien with The Lord of the Rings. As human, and again this is a general rule, not a hard and fast one, we do tend to live in immediate communities of single or similar ethnicities. If that suits your story, that's fine, but sometimes it's worth looking a little broader and being a bit more diverse. If you're writing about racial conflict, diversity is an absolute must. I'm bringing this up as a point because ethnicity will also change the appearance of your character. So it's unlikely that a person of colour will be blonde, at least not without the assistance of bleach. Redheads tend to be white-skinned and tend to be pale white at that. Green eyes can pop up in small numbers in most ethnicities. But do be careful. It's become a bit of a trope that the green-eyed character will be the hero or the love interest or the chosen one, so watch out for that. If you're going to write outside your own ethnicity or experience, then do make sure that you do your research. Read about those kind of people, talk to those kind of people. Do whatever you can to make your characters feel as real as possible. Knowing the ethnicity of a person will give you a range of physical attributes to work in. Averages may come in useful, either to follow or to turn on their heads. Americans tend to be taller than the Brits. Polynesians tend to be heavier than Asians. Asians tend to be portrayed as short, but sumo wrestlers all have to be well over 6 feet tall because humanity has a range. If you're writing historical, remember that people a few hundred years ago will have been shorter than we are today. Also think about how long they will have lived and what kind of ailments they might have suffered, because some of those ailments will have left as scars. Age will also be a factor in how someone looks. Equally, it will affect their freedoms and their ability to do things. Generally, coming-of-age books focus on characters of teenagers or early 30s. That said, I recently read The Sword of Kagan by M.L. Wang, and there the real coming-of-age story was a woman in her early to mid-30s. So there are plenty of ways to write something new. It's not necessary either to restrict your thinking to the able-bodied. Genetic issues and disabling accidents have always been around, whatever age you set the book in, so don't discount including those with different physical or mental abilities. Consider how those differences may affect that person's abilities. Blind people are said to have good hearing. Having dysfunctional legs doesn't change the ability to think or to do. Look at people like Stephen Hawking, Rosie Jones or Claire Wade. They all deal every day with things that would floor many of us, but they still get to the top of their game. It may even give the character a different viewpoint to explore. Just as Reacher can look over the heads of most others, what point of view would someone with dwarfism have? Consider also how life can scar a person, how those scars can shape a life. Think about what people like Katie Piper or Simon Weston have had to go through. Again, if you're working in a historical context, remember that many of the kinds of reconstructive surgeries that are available today are a relatively recent development. If you're working on science fiction, then you can come up with new technologies and create something that sounds realistic that we don't have today. If looking at historical writing, remember that there are different conditions that are prevalent in different times and different eras. 2020 will always be remembered at the time of COVID-19. 1918, it was Spanish flu. 1348, it was the Black Death. On a less morbid side, rickets appears where vitamin D is deficient, where people aren't getting enough sun or the right diet. That can cause the deformation of bones, which in turn can affect how a person moves. While smallpox was eradicated in 1980, before then it would leave nasty scars on the skin. Similarly, measles or bad acne will mark pits and patches will be left on the skin. These will have an effect on the physical appearance of the character you may be creating. They may even affect the way that that character thinks and feels about themselves. It may change the way they present themselves to the world. Are they covering up their scars, or are they pushing them forward and daring people to comment? Similarly, there are different ways to modify a body. You might instantly think of things like breast augmentation or rhinoplasty, the nose job. But don't forget that there are more traditional methods like piercing, tattoos, brandings, and even tribal scarrings. There are also things like foot bindings to make feet smaller, or head bindings in children to give the skull an elongated shape. If you're going to go down tattoo route, remember that tattoos have meanings, particularly ethnic ones. So it's always worth checking what that different design might mean, because you don't want to accidentally insult somebody or their culture. Also think about simple modifications like hair dye, colour contact, teeth veneers, makeup. I'm wearing makeup for these videos, something I don't often do, but without foundation on, in these photos or videos, I always have a beetroot red face, so I put makeup on. Lastly, thinking about how your character will present themselves, how they dress. Fashion and time frame will have an obvious influence on this, and this may well help inform the reader of the time frame your story exists in without actually saying what year it is. Similarly, ethnicity and religious beliefs will have an influence. A nun will dress differently to a clubber. A Sikh will wear a turban, a Jew will wear a skull cap. An Arab may wear a thawb or a kaftan. A Muslim woman may wear a burqa or a hijab. Again, all these things may also affect how these people look in your book. Consider even something as simple as jewellery. Only a monarch wears a crown, lower ranks may wear a coronet. Tiaras used to be the sole province of married ladies of the aristocracy, though these days it's a little more anything goes. But lesser jewellery will also tell you something. A simple gold band will indicate that someone is married. Pierced ears were frowned upon by ladies in Victorian eras. So yeah, those lovely earrings you can get from Victorian times, most of them are actually clip-ons. The amount of jewellery will also be used to indicate wealth. That's how jewellery came about. It's an outward indication of wealth. Similarly, the quality of the jewellery may be an indicator. Don't forget as well that jewellery may have a religious indication. I'm wearing a cross. Somebody else might wear a Star of David, or a moon Allah, or an or even a Thor's hammer. There's always little indications about what people do and what they wear that will tell you about them. There are other factors that will actually affect how a person presents themselves too, but that I'm going to look at on another session. So thank you for listening, and I hope to see you again soon.